picture. You may have heard me talk about the Enneagram. Some of you, I think, were with me when we had some instruction. Pastor Brenda came in and gave us some instruction on it. It's a wonderfully nuanced tool of self-discovery that some might call a personality test. I learned about it during the advanced certification program that I did for formative spiritual counseling that I took over 15 years ago or so. And I treated it much like other personality disorders that I've taken plenty of. And I took the test and I left it at that and just assumed that it would just reflect what I already knew about myself. And it pretty much confirmed what I thought. But after more reading and further self-discovery and other situations in which I retook the assessment, my results began to shift. Now, no personality disorder can extract whether you're actually being honest with yourself, so that's kind of a disadvantage to these. Further, how you behave in the real world doesn't always reflect the motives behind it, on the face of it, what your behavior is about. When I really began to consider what resonated in my soul, because this assessment kind of starts really trying to pull that out, I started to see another Enneatype become more prominent. Not that I was different per se, but I realized I had been answering the questions in the way that other people saw me, or how I perceived what others kind of expected of me, or what they thought it meant. It was an aha moment for me. And I was almost gleeful at it because I was like, yes, that's who I am. But when I shared this with others who have taken the test, I would often get a hesitant, oh yeah, I can see that. Or, really? Until I collaborated with Brenda, with someone as she was teaching the philosophy and principles behind the tool, and she asked me what my primary type was. And when I told her, she said, yes, I was going to guess that. It was almost startling, actually, because she didn't really know me that well, but she wanted to, and intentionally looked without any assumptions or presumptions about who I am. Once I made space to examine my reactions and responses to life situations with an updated lens prescription, seeing through a different lens, some other things began to come into focus, right? Quite a bit of it happened during quarantine. How many here have learned more about themselves during quarantine? Anyone? Am I just the only one who, thank you. I see your hand back there. I learned that I'm actually more anxious than I had realized. I never thought of myself as an anxious person, usually employing self-talk and to face anything that I was uneasy about. But when I had more time in isolation to really explore more about my motivations and fears and did some more reading, looking through the Ennea lens, I realized, yeah, that really is quite a bit of anxiety hanging out in my head. God said to Moses, I know you by name, and you have found favor in my sight. Moses knew this, knew that God was on his side, witnessed phenomenal, impossible things, yet he still doubted. He was still worried, anxious about leading the people. And God said again, ask anything of me, I'll do it because you have found favor in my sight and I know you by name. So Moses asks to see God's glory. God answers, yeah, sure, but uses a different word. It's God's goodness that will be shown, and God's name will be announced, given to him. So not only does God indicate to Moses that God knows him by name, and God favors him twice in one conversation, God reveals to Moses God's own name and shows him not glory per se, the radiance of God's power, which is what he was looking for, but God's goodness, who God is in relationship to Moses and with Moses and the rest of the Israelites. Because of the limits on our flesh, how it starts to deteriorate and have cancers and viruses, as a result of the first human's constraints put on the second human by naming her, we cannot withstand a straight-on glance with God of God's visage, to see God's face and live. Ourselves, our bodies, it can't take it. Still, God comes, and it happens in what is sometimes called a thin space. It's a liminal space between one stage and another, a significant transition, the edge of a boundary of self-understanding, maybe, being known. Something is about to happen. We see God's backside. So in quantum physics, quantum energy, we can't understand what's occurring by direct observation. We can only understand the quantum realm by its effects. That's how scientists observe what is happening at this quantum level. In this way, we cannot yet know God face on, but we can know God by what God does, how God relates to us, knows us. We know God by God's goodness. God knows your name, and you are favored of God, by God. So I've shown this video before, but I decided not to actually show the whole thing. It's a spoken word version of the woman at the well. And so some of this might sound familiar, but I love the way that this rendition of it, this basically transition of the story. To be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. Otherwise, what's the point of doing either one of them in the first place? I want to be known. For someone to look at my face and not just see 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, and 2 ears, but to see all that I am and could be. All my hopes, loves, and fears. That's too much to hope for, wish for, pray for, so I keep to myself. And by that I mean the pain that keeps me in my own private jail that's brought me here at midday to this well. To ask for a drink is no big request, but to ask it of me, a woman, unclean, ashamed, used and abused, an outcast, a failure, a sinner? No drink passed through this hand to your lips could ever be refreshing, only condemning, as I'm sure you condemn me now, but you don't. You take the time to really look at me. For to be known is to be loved, and to be loved is to be known. And you know me. Every hurt stored up, every hope, every dread. All I am and could be, you tell me about me. From others, this would bring hurt and shame, but coming from you brings grace, mercy, hope, and salvation. I met you, but I love you. I just met you, but I love you. I don't know you, but I want to get to. We all need this for our own. Jesus sees who you are and what you can be. I know you by name, and you are favored by me. The Pharisees in the gospel narrative read today, didn't want to get to know Jesus. They wanted to trip him up, embarrass him, shame him. And just like these learned people of Jewish law, biblical scholars often interpret this scene from the surface, the face of it, by seeing Jesus' response in a very modern concept of the separation of church and state. But Jesus was consistently countercultural, disruptive even. Speaking to the unclean sinner woman, scandalous. So here he uses the word apadote, something Greek. I don't know Greek as well. It means give back. It said render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Said the word means to give back. Caesar's face is on the coin, so it must be his, so give it back. But to God, give back what is God's. Which is what? Everything. Our lives, our livelihood, even that coin. Why were they so bent on some gotcha campaign against Jesus? Jesus knew them. Truly, Jesus loved them, but knew their hearts, and he was deeply grieved by it. Still, the truth will out. God passes by. Goodness to those who have eyes to see. Appalling, disgusting, sore to the heart for those who cannot be bothered to update their lenses to see. Patrick O'Tuama, poet, theologian, and formerly a leader of the Corrymeela community, Northern Ireland's oldest peace and reconciliation organization. It's beautiful. He wrote this: why face reality? What is on the other side of such facings? Otis Moss III speaks of working inward in order to work outward, doing the inner work, discovering who you truly are. And he quotes Howard Thurman, who urged people to take an inward journey in order to find the sound of the genuine in you. Isn't that beautiful? Work inward in order to find the sound of the genuine in you. Finding a way to face up to past complicities, failures, prejudices, laments, can provide a freedom to live from this genuine space. This isn't just about individuals seeking therapy either. Failures are both personal and political. Political in the sense that it is community. Facing them, then, is both personal and political, because even when we change, it affects the people around us as well. The outward. Facing them, then. And in all hope, we hope, the outworking of such brave facings, being brave about facing these things, is also both personal and political, and it's for all, for everyone. God knows you by name, wants to love you. This crucial work to let Jesus see you, to see into you, give you a new lens so you can accept that you are no longer condemned. So let's stop condemning ourselves. Then we can see into others and into our community and into our country with a lens that see the truth, can see God's movement and the effects of God in our world and in us, with eyes to see. Like after cataract surgery, a lot of people have been having that and changing the lens on your eyes, actually, as Jesus sees. Be brave. God knows us by name. Take courage and make the inward journey in order to find the sound of the genuine in you. Face the reality of ourselves so we can face the reality of such freedom for all.